You have just come off a panel talking about native advertising, which is one of the big driving trends in advertising at the moment, and yet Xaxis is a data-driven audience buying group that is at the other end of the spectrum. It's all about data. What can Xaxis and data do with native?
It's a great question, actually. I think there's a few answers to that question, actually. So the first thing I would say is that no part of the media buy exists independently of any of the other parts of the media buy. Ultimately, and I think what we just talked about on stage as well, is the idea of a barbell, which is actually, I think, a Huffington Post concept, whereby you've got two extremes, or media polarizing around two extremes. One is the programmatic piece, and one is the more creatively driven piece on the other side. Now, those two things are very different, but they're very complementary. And what you need is the pole in the middle, the piece that connects them, as in a barbell, needs to be extremely strong. And so actually the role that we see native playing is numerous. First of all, it attracts an audience. It creates new content for those audiences to engage with. It's very important because, you know, in the case of video, for example, we want as much content as possible that we can also advertise against. Plus, if we were to rely purely on the programmatic space in isolation of everything else, there's no way we would generate enough interesting and useful data about the audiences. And of course, data is the fuel for all of this. You know, our data management platform is what enables us to do the type of media buying and execution on the programmatic side, and we rely very heavily on other parts of the media plan to engage with audiences, to create content that those audiences are interested in. So I don't see the two as being contradictory or in conflict at all. I see them as being very complementary, which is also why, of course, Group M has just acquired a company called Plister, a German company that we are looking to bring into other markets very aggressively. And they're specialists in using data-driven or in doing data-driven native advertising. Yeah, so again, there's a nexus between those two things.
The early days of programmatic advertising, at least real-time bidding part of it, was characterized by a suspicion or a belief that this was geared towards selling the low-cost, the remnant inventory. Is that changing, and are publishers shaking off that perception?
I think it's definitely changing. I mean, I think it's been changing for a while now, and you're seeing that in so many different things. More and more publishers are not masking the URLs. More and more publishers are working with private exchanges, integrating their inventory directly with our platform, which is, of course, the main way that we source our inventory, is by integrating publishers directly into our technology. Also now with 24/7 technology with Xaxis for Publishers, we have another way of working with publishers and enabling them to monetize their inventory directly with our demand. So the entire space is moving much more into a premium environment. Video is going to be next. I think there's some interesting challenges around video, around how many different parameters there are around what defines it as being premium. It's not just display where it's viewable or not viewable, but you know, you've got sound on, sound off, autoplay versus non-autoplay, etc. So, you know, but there's definitely a move away from just long tail RTB. I just don't think that's as interesting as the opportunities that the technology offers in other areas.
Viewability increasingly seems like a key metric on which video ads are bought and sold. Somewhat surprising to learn that, you know, not all videos were viewed by humans.
Is it? Don't forget, I mean, you know, most publishers, all publishers, I suppose, are trying to create impressions that they can sell. And so, you know, there's not all publishers and not all parts of the ecosystem, unfortunately, are scrupulous players. I wouldn't say that for any of the people who are here. Obviously, this is a very premium audience, but, you know, we need to be very careful about that. We need to control for the quality of the inventory, whether that's in display or whether it's in video. And there's a distinction between programmatic buying and programmatic execution, at least in terms of how our business operates. 100% of our business is programmatic execution. 100%. You know, we do not send IOs around. We don't buy specific websites. We execute the entirety of a media brief, which for us is an audience brief, programmatically. However, there are some markets where we buy more media programmatically versus others. So, for example, in the UK, we buy a lot of our inventory programmatically, whereas in a market like Germany, we buy a very small amount of it programmatically, and instead we integrate publishers' inventory directly into our technology and then execute programmatically. So in terms of where I see that, you know, certainly Germany is now starting to engage more. France is way ahead. France really embraced the whole area of programmatic buying and selling very, very quickly, as did the UK. The UK is often a fast follower after the US in any case. We've seen that with many technologies and the adoption with many different technologies. I think some of the Nordics are very interesting, and interestingly, again, it's sort of some of the Central Eastern European markets. Certainly the noises that publishers are making there and that the demand side's making there, it's a bit like mobile in Africa. They skipped a whole generation of technology and went straight to the mobile. And I think it's a bit like that with some of the Central Eastern European markets. I think they're saying, okay, we never really built a big display ecosystem with legacy companies and legacy business models. This looks great. Let's just go straight to a programmatic environment. So I think that's an interesting dynamic as well.
Some certain European countries, I guess to some extent Europe as a whole, have quite a high bar on privacy around consumer data. Does that make doing data-driven programmatic selling harder here in Europe than it is in North America?
I think it's different, is what I would say. I think it's different. So first of all, it's another reason why we don't, you asked the question before quite rightly, we don't see Europe as one country or one market. Even despite of the attempts of the regulators in Brussels to align around a single data policy and regulatory framework, the reality is that they were very far away from that, and it's still very much about the local data protection authorities, local regulation, local flavors to culture and how data is consumed as well. Don't forget, we've got some very ex-communist states living alongside long-time capitalist states in Europe, and all sorts in between. All have very different points of view around how data are used, So I think it just makes it different. I think what it does is it re-emphasizes our strategy around having our own DMP, because for us to create a consistent way of working, we cannot be reliant on the third-party data ecosystem. Whereas in markets like the US, not only can we not, but we have to be reliant on that ecosystem because it's so incredibly broad, and deep. There's a huge amount of data in the market in a country like the US, and not using that is you're foolish not to. Whereas in Europe, it's so much more fragmented that's the reason we've built our own data management platform, which we collect our own data into. Enables us to create one single view of the audience and then one way of working, one technology stack, so we can offer the same products in all the markets for our clients. It's an exciting time for us. We've just merged with our WPP sister company, who we originally grew out of, so 24/7. So that merge is going very well. It's given us some additional markets that we weren't in before. It's obviously given us access to technology and developers that previously we didn't have direct access to. So it's enabled us to double down on our strategy of building those parts of the tech stack that we believe are fundamentally important to our strategy and to that of our clients, primarily the DMP and decision engine. And it's also given us access to a whole new set of stakeholders. We're now working in lots of different ways with publishers, both as a buyer of media, but also as a provider of technology to them. So it's a very exciting time for us from that point of view. We've just made our first acquisition, a company called Banner Connect in the Netherlands. Probably one of the smartest independent trade desks in the market. Fantastic group of people with really great technology. So we're integrating their technology and also setting up the workflows with that team and integrating that business. They'll continue to operate standalone, but they'll also support a lot of Xaxis strategies. And who knows what's next? We never seem to stand still. There's always new things around the corner.